Good afternoon and welcome to Seahorse Publications. We have another guest who's recently published a book, and her name is Carol McKay. Hello, Carol.
Hello.
Carol is a very well known and very much respected writer in the Central Belt and further. So I'm just going to read from her book. This is the beautiful book, One Last Tangle, Footsteps. Love the wee footsteps. Carol Mackay's prize-winning short stories and poems are widely published in anthologies and magazines such as New Writing Scotland, Poetry Scotland, Gutter, um, Pushing Out the Boat, and Dyslexia. Her pamphlet, Reading the Landscape, was published by Hedgehog Press in 2022. The Scottish Poetry Library named Cayley from that collection as one of the 20 best Scottish poems. Yeah, and it is, if you've read it, if you haven't, that's another thing to find. Hedgehog also published Name of This Makes Any Sense. None of This Makes Any Sense, a micro pamphlet collaboration with partner Keith Mackay in 2024. Cara won the Robert Louis Stevenson Fellowship in 2010 and has taught creative writing through the Open University between 2004 and 2016. So you can well imagine the impact that this woman has had on other people's writing. And at Seahorse, I'm very keen to support excellent writers, but also people who are instrumental in supporting other writers to find their path. And Carol Mackay is definitely one of them. She's a lovely woman and she's a formidable poet. Please welcome Carol Mackay.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Linda. It really is a huge honour. I was delighted to be published, to have one last tango published by Seahorse. You've been a pleasure, a joy to work with all the way through it. I really like everything that you've done, supporting other writers and the arts in general. I don't know how you find the time and the energy, but you do, the enthusiasm, and you enthused me and other writers as well.
Thank you.
So, shall I start reading?
Yes, it'd be lovely if you just maybe read a couple of poems from the book and then we can have a wee chat
Okie
about
doke.
them and then get another read. Yeah, that'd be lovely, Carol.
Okie dokes, we'll go ahead with that then. The book is a mix of sad and happy, and try to be funny in some of them. But this one is quite a lot about the environment as well. So this one I'll start with is called At the Bus Stop Outside Tesco. At the bus stop outside Tesco, I saw a starling, its scruffy feathers rainbow-hued and gleaming. My ears were filled with crick and chatter from pensioners like me with bags of shopping. One starling. On the vast, fast-flowing tarmac stream by whose banks we waited, gulls cruised above Audis. Murmurs were drowned by roars from a range of rovers. This part of the city teems with birdlife. Feral pigeons occupy the tavern. I've heard an oyster catcher, seen a cormorant surface with a fiercely flapping fish clamped in its beak. Last night a swan flew past my window, 5 stories high, sail-winged, tap-necked, en route from the canal to Possil Loch. The strangest bird of all was one lone starling at the bus shelter on a busy road through Glasgow. I glanced away, looked back, but it had gone. Now I'd like to read the title poem, One Last Tango. It's actually, I wrote it about my dad. There's a poem which is quite sad about my dad. He was a bit of a Jekyll and Hyde character. I loved him to bits and he loved me. So I won't read the sad one, but this is one about when he was older, and it was called One Last Tango. He used to take me dancing on the foothills of his shoes. Now we dance the mountain range of stairs. No foxtrot, quick step, slow, slow, slow. No jive, no jitterbug, twist and shake. No samba, cha-cha. He risks a fall. He wants to dip too far in one last tango. Because we don't like to think we're getting old.
Yeah, I think we all, just the age we're at as well, both of us probably, so you talk a bit about that to your friends, just, trying to kind of get on with everything as you notice things. But I think for a man in Glasgow and what I've just, what I've read about your dad and what we've talked, I think he's seemed very much like mine, a man's man of that era. And certainly I did get the dancing on my dad's toes as well. That's such a universal in
Yeah,
this part of the world, which I think anyone hearing you read that from where we are, maybe it's worldwide, I don't know,
and it's
but
what
I
I would.
think people would get it. And I think it's one of these poems. It's kind of, for me, it's shown the fortitude of that man's character. That the slow foxtrot or slow, quick, quick, slow just becomes slow, slow, slow. But he's determined. He's still determined to do everything. And the dance is now just getting up the staircase
Yep.
and managing to get up the staircase. And I think it's very moving when you say he wants to dip one last time. Because whether it's the case, I can imagine in some ways it's like a split screen with your dad at another time in his life, maybe thinking about that
Yeah,
as
yeah,
he's going up the stairs. I mean, my father had a massive stroke quite young, and I was determined to learn how to lift him. He was a very tall man, over 6 foot. And so I took a job for 6 weeks when I was doing my doctorate in an old folks' home. And honestly, the people that I met in there,
really.
just fantastic. And
Yeah.
one very old woman said that to me just as I'm doing things in here. She'd been a Japanese prisoner of war person. She just said, when I'm in here, I just take myself to the better times I had with some of the war prisoners because we were all together the same as all us women. And she was kind of living a split screen life. She was well able in her head, but her environment wasn't in any way appealing to her. And actually, ironically, a Japanese prisoner of war camp, and sometimes some places was because there was a camaraderie between the young women there. But it was,
Yeah.
yeah, it was interesting. And I felt that when I read that poem, your dad, and I think you read it, Carol, with such love coming out of you when you read that.
Thank you.
And the joy, of just
Yeah,
reading about him, talking about him.
yeah. Well, as I say, he was a Jekyll and Hyde, but he was a really loving human being, warm human being, and emotionally intelligent. So you've got to remember the good things. Also, it's a
Yeah.
beautiful cover, isn't it?
Did he dance a tango? Did your dad go to the dancing? I think they
He,
did that generation, didn't they?
yeah, he and my mum loved to dance. I don't think he liked to dance as much as she would have liked, but he did. He did go to the dance, and we danced at family parties as well.
Yeah. I mean, that's what my mum said. If my dad later on in life was not being the best, she would say, because he was very handsome as well, and she'd say, he was the best looking place. He was the best looking man in Stewart. The Stewart was some institute. They went a dance place in Lanarkshire. Best looking man in the Stewart, and everybody wanted to dance off him. And I remember years later, he'd had a stroke. Um, a couple of strokes by this time, and he was sitting in the chair doing his hand exercises and all this.
Yeah.
And he was telling my mum had gone to the shops, and he said, "Oh God, your mum at the weekend had a few whiskies, they're in their 70s, and he's had a stroke for 30 years, many strokes." And she said, "Come on, Matt, just get me up for the dance." I said, I had my walking frame, walking about trying to, but I just thought it's just, yeah, they're of their time. It's
But the same
romantic, isn't it?
doesn't matter what we look like on the outside, how old we get on the outside. We're the same person inside, aren't we? From the minute we're born,
100%.
I think, right till the very end.
Yeah.
Most of us,
Most of
obviously.
us, I
Yeah.
think. I think. So yeah, and the other poem is one of my favourites in the book as well about because there's this um very everyday title, at the shops at Tesco. So we're all there. We all imagine this urban landscape, and then we're transformed to the skies and then around the skies. And the line where you say the swan flew past your window 5 stories up,
It really did. It really did. It was amazing.
I mean, I was very fascinated and impressed by your knowledge of birds.
Well, I
Are
don't know.
you a bird watcher?
I think I'm a bit obsessed sometimes.
Is that since you moved there or before?
No, I think I would like to fly. I think I would like to be able to fly. But I've definitely seen plenty of birds here. The other day I looked out the window, well, it was after I wrote that poem, I saw parakeets. There's parakeets in this area too. And I saw them last week. That's only the third time I've seen them, I think, in the two
So this
years.
area is Maryhill.
Yeah.
It's Maryhill
So
at the
close to the
where
river and it's
the
close to
canal is.
and Dawes Park.
So there's lots of bird life there. I mean,
It's just amazing. Yeah.
and I love the way you come back to because this starling that you introduced us to, and then you go through all the other birds. And I think obviously the Range of Rovers is quite clever, quite a clever turn of phrase, and the tarmac like a river for them
Yeah.
to land on. Absolutely beautiful imagery. You can see it all, but then there's a kind of slightly forlorn end to it.
Yeah. Well, do you
I
remember?
don't know whether the starling has got something wrong with it, but as opposed to the swan taking off, the starling's stuck there on the tarmac. It seems to have landed alone.
Well, I don't know if you remember. I'm a Glaswegian, so I used to go into the town for shopping on a Saturday with my mum, and in Sucky Hall Street, Watt Brothers store was always when it was beginning to get dusk. All the starlings, whole flocks of starlings came down, and the air was just absolutely full of the sound of them. And they would land on the what Brothers building, and it's all gone. They're apparently all dying off, the starlings. So that's why you don't see flocks, you don't see murmurations now, shape shifting, like chiffon scarves in the sky. You don't see that so much here. I think it still
What's
happens.
the reason for that? Do you know? Have you looked that up? Why is that? Why are they dying off? Do you know?
There just seem to be more and more of the big birds surviving, but fewer of the flocks of the smaller birds. I'm not an
Well,
ornith.
I'm gonna speak. I don't know. I published another guy last year, Bobby Motherwell, and he's becoming quite the ornithologist. So I'll get on the phone to him when he speak to him about something else. I'm going to ask him about these wee starlings. Anyway, so I'm going to invite you to continue reading. Carol, your other 3 poems you have for us today. I'm really looking forward to hearing you.
Well, this one is called Diaphanous, and it's there's a bit about birds in that one as well. Okay, so Diaphanous. I don't believe in God, but every time I use the lift, I thank it. Think it for every floor it passes, for every opening of its door. Obeisance, a mental genuflection. And when I know my granddaughter, 16, a tender beauty, walks alone through Glasgow city evenings, I crave protection, pray God or someone she'll make it through. And on the river walk, a million times, hearing my tread, hearing the soft burr of sound through tessellated leaves, I feel part of something holy, diaphanous. And when against white blue sky, gulls balance on airflows invisible to me, I think them grace and praise. Thank God, praise be. I like something that William Blake said 200 and odd years ago, everything that lives is holy. So I kind of feel that. I'll move on to a poem about my mum. My mum was a lovely singer. So this one's a kind of sonnet, a kind of love poem. My mother had a voice. My mother, as a small child, had a voice so sweet and pure, wee linty, lost in dreams while gazing through the window of the tram that fellow travellers hushed their talk to hear. Wizened men hardened from foundry shifts lowered their news to listen to her song. Survivors of the 1418 war, children wearing rags or parish clothes, gaunt-faced women old before their time, softened, momentarily transposed. Beyond the tram, dray horses' iron shoes clattered on Glasgow's cobbles, keeping beat. She'd outsing skylarks in clear mountain air, a solo blackbird in an urban street. And
Right.
shall I? I've got a choice. Shall I read Memorial, which was about to my friend, or do you want something a bit lighter?
You read whatever you like, Carol. What you want to read.
Okay, well, I'll read this one. This was for one of my school friends, and I met her at a rally in the town. I just bumped into her maybe about 15 or 20 years ago. And it was lovely to see her again because I hadn't seen her for years. And then the next thing I knew, I heard that she'd died a couple of years after. And it's funny because, as my friend Jacqueline Smith, the late Jacqueline Smith said, I was surprised that I was so moved by the fact that a school friend had died. And Jacqueline said, well, she's just died for you, just now in your life. Anyway, I wrote this poem, Memorial, and it's in memoriam, Senga Russell. The birds fell out of the sky when I heard you'd died, smothering the earth with feathers and crooked wings, as if flight and birdsong could no longer be a thing. I remember standing at the window of your mother's flat, well beyond the range of all the crows, level with the flimsy, raucous gulls. How did you play, I asked you, a child at the top of a tower block? 19 and 19 stories up, I felt cut off. But you gloried in the view, and I learned then that nothing in this life could drag you down. You pointed to the graveyard straight below, its sandstone boundary separating the living from the dead, and you told me you'd played hide and seek between the headstones. Now even your skyscraper's gone, no lasting memorial. But I'll remember you, head high, sparkle-eyed, blackbirds and thrushes trilling, exuberant as gulls freewheeling in the air. Death didn't, death didn't catch you any more than the cemetery caretaker. Shake out your wings, dear friend, and soar, still vital. Thank you.
Beautiful. It's very impressive and a very real legacy to your friendship. And I think both of us were very friendly with Jacqueline. That's very apt, isn't it? She
Yeah.
just died to you now,
Yeah.
because you didn't know. So yeah. But I think again, I just think from we come on here, we've got birds, and when I asked about that, whether it's something else, you said, "Well, I've always wanted to fly," and of course, as a metaphor, that's so many, many, many things. And I think, to be frank, in your poetry, you do. My goodness, these poems just take right off the page, Carol. The imagery. You must have been a wonderful teacher, because if you're imparting some of this stuff to your students, you were doing really well by them. I mean, that poem you did, the one about holiness and the idea, I don't know, did you ever have religion as a child?
No, I was a pagan. I was always just no. I mean, we did.
Your family didn't have religion.
Well, they did and they didn't. We didn't go to church, and I wasn't christened. But I was the fourth child, and the first two were christened, and the second two weren't. So I
You
guess my
fell
mum and
away.
dad.
But I think it doesn't matter what religion, the language of religion is very
Yeah,
entrancing,
yeah,
and all of that grace, holiness, openness, giftingness, all of the language that you were using there. Um, are you frightened of lifts? I
yeah.
was thinking it sounded as if somebody, thank God, every time the door opened, it still worked.
It when we moved into this flat about 2.5 years ago, the lift broke down, and it was broken down it was breaking down, trapping people in it. So, but they've got it sorted now. But it was a bit scary.
I also thought it was a lovely move from that, which was kind of every day. I mean, I know it's scary because it's tiring, but it's the everyday then to move to that mothering, nurturing part,
Yeah,
which I certainly have had with my three children. When I know now I'm watching my daughter having it with my
yeah,
granddaughters because they're getting out and she's on the phone, can't sleep all night. I mean, when my children were young, we didn't have phones, when they
yeah,
were in their teen. So you just had to hope for the best when they went out. And I think you didn't make that terrifying, but what you did really do was just it was as if you were there with her in that holy space.
yeah,
God, please protect us. I don't know if there's a God or if there is, but somebody. And I'm not quite sure if I'm religious or not. I don't think so, but I do pray.
yeah. I
I
think it's a
implore
basic
someone
thing.
to help a
Yeah,
situation because when I feel helpless, you have to reach out to something other than yourself. I maybe swim a lot now, so I even meditate on someone for that swim and just try and it's like praying somewhere or thinking about them for the whole swim, whatever 25 lengths, just to
do you?
try
Wow.
and gift them with you're thinking about them, without thinking about them too much, just have them in the frame. And I think, life is hard. I think all of us, even in the meta narrative of life is grossly difficult at the moment, but even our smaller, it can be difficult. And I think I love the move from the fear of your daughter outside because you carry that a wee bit for a minute quite um, cleverly into you walking along a path with leaves behind you. And for a minute you think, oh, but then it's not. It's just you.
So it's just a sense
It's
of
not
joy.
ended behind you.
I,
But the run of that was
yeah.
really wonderful.
It's just
And
about
then,
spirit and holiness and just a sense of belonging, I think, and being part of something bigger than
yeah,
yourself.
and I think also, a lot of the work I did in my thesis was about transcendence, and
Yeah.
it's a way of transcending the everydayness to look for something above and beyond. Now, whether that's religious or whether that's exalted hope or whatever it is, I think we all need it. And of course, religions have got the language for it that fits perfectly. I also, again, we had the birds with your mum, being a wee linty. And I wondered, how did you know about that? Who told you the stories of that?
It's just family stories, isn't it? They come down to you. She was always a singer. When she was a wee girl, my granny took her to have an audition, and she stood up on the stage and sang her song, but she was shy. And when she finished, her mother gave her a row and said, "I couldn't hear you behind a car ticket, a bus ticket, a tram
Right.
ticket." Yeah. But she loved singing, and she wasn't she wouldn't belt it out. She wasn't a really strong singer, but there was a softness and a sweetness to her voice. And I mean, our life was full of music because she sang, because the radio was on, and she sang along. And then she found her. She was invited to some person invited her to sing professionally in Glasgow. I can't remember the man's name, some agent or something. But she said she couldn't do it. She was too shy to do it. She said she'd need a wee drink, and he said we could manage that, but she was too shy. But she did find when she was over 60 and she joined a club for older people, older women, a social club. She sang there. She loved singing to them. That was her wee, not professional, but her wee amateur version of being a
Yeah,
performer.
I think that's lovely. And she's taking that time to find her confidence. And also, she doesn't feel she has to be stage struck. I think that was beautiful. But I just, you perfectly depicted that wee girl with the men, the newspapers dropping, the trams, just the way she could bring people to peacefulness
Yeah.
with this sweet voice, and hold the moment.
You
So I
told
just
me
wondered if you,
something about yourself when you were wee on a train. I
yeah,
don't,
I had the same experience. My mum used to sit me up in those days. The carriages had a luggage rack, like rope above, and I was small enough to sit a wee bit bent there. And I used to sing all the way to Saltcoats or Ayr or wherever we were going for the day. And on the way down, I liked it because I always used to sing it for my aunts and all that. We would have parties. We were quite a raucous family. And I'd pull me up out my bed, just to sing. And then, but in the way back, in those days, working class people would have a wee drink down at the seaside. And I didn't enjoy it in the way back because it was just a bit more,
Right there.
chaotic. Aye. But my mum, I think, was probably like you. My mum had a very beautiful voice, but my father was the singer. He was like Brooke Benton, Ray Charles. But my mum had a gorgeous voice, and the only way at family parties, I always remember had a wee bed recess for myself. We were so impoverished, and I would pull the curtain of my bed recess because I could hear my mum's song. Every day a song, and she always just stared up at a corner of the ceiling. Like my dad would be walking about with his arms out, kicking his leg like Frankie Foninos, but my mum would just sit in a chair, a hard chair near the window, and I loved it. It was just because she was quite a tough woman, but at that moment, she seemed to, as we say, transcend herself and just sing this beautiful song, looking up there, and then she would look back down, and the place was an uproar of clapping because she was. But I say, Mum, why don't you do that? Once I got older. Oh no, no, that's not for me. And it's probably like your mum, and it maybe was part of that generation as well, even part of character. Beautiful poetry. And yeah, I think that memorial to your friend, I'm glad that you did that because we had a mutual love and respect for Jacqueline. And I know you and I at the end were the only people really that would have spent much time with. And it was difficult. And people can be difficult when they're suffering and they're ill. But I think everything you got there about that woman's, is it Greta? What's her name?
Senga. Senga.
Senga. Everything you got about Senga's her tenacity and her way of just finding through, playing about in the playing about in the graveyard. And I love that when she said she managed to avoid that and she avoided the guy that looked after the graves as well. She was very able.
Yeah.
And
She
it
was like,
helped you. Helped
oh,
you. She seemed to be
yeah,
somebody that gave you a lot of oomph, you know.
yeah.
Um,
She was lovely. So, yeah.
So I hope some of her family hear this read and see the book, because they would appreciate it or send them the poem. I think they would love that. But thank you very much, Carol, for reading for us today.
So much for inviting me.
What a writer that girl is, folks. I hope you've enjoyed listening to Carol. She's, I think, a wee bit like her mum. She's not singing and dancing, but there's such a solid, profound depth to her voice and to what she's saying. So I hope you've enjoyed it. And if you didn't manage to the launch, which was wonderful in Glasgow, we have two coming up. We have one in Dundee for any Dundonians watching this. We'll be in Forks in Dundee in May the 13th. So come down, 6:30. And then we're in Stirling, the beautiful Stirling Library. It's one of my favourite places to read. And Karen McFarlane will be reading alongside Carol. Both these women brought out their books this month. So I hope you'll come along. And meanwhile, I know you're going to listen to this again and you're going to hear that girl's tone. And there's a delivery in the way Carol reads, which goes straight to the heart. And I think it's wonderful. And I would like to thank her very much. I know it's not our favourite, so I'd like to thank you very much for agreeing to do this, Carol.
I'm a
And
bit shy.
thank you. I know, a bit shy. I know. Next time we're going to have you singing.
No, I'll leave that.
Anyway, I'd like
Thanks
to
a lot,
say
then.
thanks very much to Carol McKay, and her book is available from Seahorse Publications. You'll find it on the website, and it's one you can go back to many, many times, which is not always the case, but there's many, more or less all of them I've read over and over. So I'd like to thank you for joining us today, and I hope you keep your eye on the Seahorse Publications YouTube channel for further introductions to our poets. And thank you very much, Carol, and thank you.